I hope everyone's having a great day at Atlassian Summit 2017 so far. I'm Amy, I'm a product marketing manager here at Atlassian, and I'm the EMC for the Scale track. Today we have Rachel and Joe talking about upgrades and admin at scale, how to become a Jira Admin Champion. Rachel Wright is an entrepreneur, certified Jira administrator, and author of the book Jira Strategy Admin Workbook. She's actually got a couple of copies to give away at the end of the presentation, so find out how you can get a couple of copies of those. And as of today, she's on day 845 of a long-term road trip. So she's living out of an RV and has done for 845 days. So if you want to learn more about that, go and chat to her after the talk. We also have Jo, who's a product manager on the Atlassian home team. She spent 6 months backpacking around Asia last year and fell in love with Muay Thai. She's also an avid baker and once spent a full day baking a macaron tower. So if you want to chat to them about that, or of course Jira, because that's what you're here for, stay around afterwards or to ask some Q&A. Without further ado, I'm going to invite Rachel to the stage to kick off the presentation.
All right, good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. I'd like to start off by reading you a short story. So there were once 3 companies, and the first instance that was smartly set up and implemented. Everything was carefully planned and executed. The projects, issue types, workflows, and other settings were standardized and built for the needs of the users. All the configurations and processes were documented, and the users were well trained. The transition from an old tracking tool was simple, and all the users were happy. The application was pruned and maintained like a beautiful garden, and its administrators were carefully chosen process administrators. And they routinely cared for and meticulously shaped the garden's growth. So I'm sure this represents all of your Jira instances, right? I'd like to tell you a little bit about more what I'm used to. So the second company had the complete opposite setup. Their Jira instance was old, and it hadn't grown or matured in tandem with their business. There were no standards, no recognizable patterns, and certainly no documentation explaining the configurations. And it was a free-for-all mentality. It resulted in an overgrown swamp of data. So anyone that wanted a project customization was instantly made an application administrator and went on their way. Changes were made without a strategy and without regard for the application as a whole. The swamp became more and more unmanageable for this company each day. So the third company, they wanted Jira to look and act like all their other internal applications. And they spent many months making visual and functional customizations, but eventually so much had changed that they couldn't upgrade without wiping out all their custom elements. The users weren't available to take advantage of new features and functions in newer versions, and one by one their application and add-ons reached the dreaded end-of-life support status. So the recommendations in this presentation are a result of working in these environments and digging them out of the swamp. So today we'll talk about the top mistakes I've seen and made as a Jira administrator. And afterwards, Josephine Lee will talk to you about upgrades. All right, let's get started with some of my mistakes. And the first are about workflow and incorrect assumptions I made about how workflows worked in Jira. So this screenshot shows just a simple asset management workflow in diagram or visual mode. And I once used visual mode to edit a status. Now, I thought this change was going to only apply to that one workflow. But instead, oh, I hear laughing, you've done this. Instead, I've changed the name of the entire status in all of Jira. And what's worse, I didn't realize what I had done. I did this in a production system with thousands of users. So I promptly broke all their workflows, broke all their filters, and they came running, and that's how I learned of my mistake. That was kind of a bad day. So my second mistake with workflows is with this close status. I thought there was logic specific to the closed status that would happen automatically when an issue transitioned there. I thought that a status change was automatically going to trigger that issue updated line item. But no, I was wrong there too. So instead, don't make my mistakes. Don't change a status in visual workflow mode unless you're really trying to change it through all of Jira. And then also, Jira has no special regard for that status at the end called closed. It's just a status like any other. So when you create a new workflow transition, it's going to add a default post function for you, and it's going to fire a generic event that can be processed by the listeners. You want to change this to an issue closed event if you want that, hey, this issue is done notification sent to your users. And you can see this as post function number 6 in this screenshot. Okay, so next I'd like to talk about resolve versus closed. And you can see that this is the default workflow that comes with Jira, and it's got both those two statuses, resolved and closed. Well, for a long time, I didn't understand the difference between these two statuses, and my users certainly didn't either. So this led to issues being considered done in either status. I remember we'd be sitting in a daily meeting, and I'd be manually calculating resolved plus done, resolved plus closed, so we could see how many issues were really closed. And there was no way to report that total work done. It was all a manual process. And then also, issues languished in the resolve status until I finally figured out how it was supposed to be used. So I was going to leave this mistake out, but I saw yet another company doing it very recently. In fact, they were using resolve to indicate issues where they had done some work, and then using closed to indicate issues where they hadn't. Well, you and I know that the best way to indicate how or why something is closed is to use the resolution field and not a status. So instead, there should only be one status where it's clear that no more work is needed. And the standard closed status, or even the business project friendly done status, is sufficient. No need to create new custom statuses. And if you're going to use resolved, you need to teach your users what that means at your company. What needs to occur for an issue to get into resolved status, and what must occur right after to get an issue into closed status. Now, I was unsuccessful in explaining this at my company, so we simply stopped using resolved. That's another option. Okay, my next mistake is about resolutions. So at the top right of this screenshot, it shows a very common mistake. The status is closed, but the resolution is unset, and it reads unresolved. So at one company, there were 34 resolution choices. I mean, they had things like rejected by security, rejected by Bob, rejected by Joe. Ridiculous values here. And many were just really duplicates of each other. And some were even invalid. My very favorite was in progress. How can you have an issue that's closed with a resolution of in progress? I don't understand. I'd recommend not doing that. So at another company, the resolutions weren't even set by workflows. That field remained null. And this is the condition in this screenshot. So when this happens, users will see issues, even the ones that they've created, on their default dashboard and that assign to me gadget. Because from Jira's perspective, this issue is not resolved. So instead, make sure that a resolution is being set as part of the workflow. And ideally, you should show a transition screen where the user can choose the proper resolution for their scenario. So if that's not possible, you can set a resolution in the background using a workflow transition. And the resolution is in an easily editable field. So to fix issues that are missing their resolution, you can make a temporary workflow transition with a post function, like shown in post function number 1. Or you can use a plugin, like Script Runner for Jira. My next mistake is about issue types. And I love this screenshot because it's just utterly ridiculous. look how long that selection box scrolls. So how many different issue types could one company possibly need? Well, the company in this screenshot had 134. And it wasn't because they were actually needed. It was just because when a new project was created, brand new issue types were created just for that project. So reporters in this project were totally overwhelmed. Which issue type do I select? And they had to wade through over 100 of the available selections. And look at these choices. They're not even listed alphabetically. So this is no fun. And it also meant that the project leads couldn't accurately report on information in their project. They couldn't segment their issues and understand what kinds of problems their teams were addressing. So instead, just don't create issue types that you don't really need. But when you do create them, make them generic enough so they can be shared within multiple projects in Jira. And then don't assign that default scheme because it contains all the issue types. So if you have many, don't let your project get into the same circumstance. All right, my next mistake is actually 2 in 1. So this screenshot shows the default link types when linking one issue to another. And Jira comes with about 6. Sounds pretty sufficient, right? Well, at one company, this list grew to 20 different options. How are there 20 ways to link things to each other? I'm not sure. But people added duplicates of duplicates. They added misspelled issue types. Plugins added issue types, and those plugins were never uninstalled. So those remained in the background too. So what I did is I did an audit, and I said, okay, well, which ones are the most popular? Which ones have the most issues assigned to them? And then I went through and I cleaned up the dupes, the ones that weren't really needed, and I did a manual cleanup. And Jira handled this perfectly for me. So that's the first mistake. Don't let your issue type list grow to 20. But here's where this cleanup activity went horribly wrong. So my action changed the updated date for a very large set of issues, hundreds of thousands of issues. Well, I didn't know it, but there was another app using the REST API, and they were using that updated date to limit the scope of their own queries. So my change caused an increase in the scope of their query. Their queries timed out, and their apps stopped functioning. How nice of me. So instead, it's really important to know exactly what apps are doing when they're using the REST API. And that way you can plan around them and consider them when making global changes. So here's my cleanup checklist. I do this anytime I make very large or bulk changes, just to make sure things are okay. So first, after any cleanup activity, I manually verify the results. Do they look like what I expected to see? Do they look like what it looked like in QA when I did it there first? And then I run the integrity checker and also any applicable system health tools. Next, I review the application logs for errors that just weren't there yesterday. And then I check on all those users with REST API connections, and I make sure their apps are still functioning like expected. And then finally, I build in some time to be ready to respond to the unexpected. All right, my next mistake is about ownership. So the screenshot shows another example of ridiculousness. And man, I wish the screenshot was fake, but it's not. So as I told you earlier, at this company, anyone who asked for application administrator access got it. So at a company of about 1,000 users, 133 were Jira admins. So that's about 128 too many for my taste. I'm happy with about 5. I can get 5 people to all agree to the same strategy and all notify each other about what types of changes they're making. But how do you get 133 people to not step on each other's toes and to follow the same strategy? It's very difficult, right? So admins made any change they wanted. They didn't plan, even log, or communicate these changes to their peers. And their changes had negative impacts on the application as a whole. They duplicated schemes multiple times. They installed add-ons and never removed them. And really the stability and usability of the application degraded every day. So I remember that, and I did this once. I ran a complex query, and it brought Jira down. At a second company, there was no one who officially owned the application. Ownership over 10 years passed from team to team. And each team, they were busy managing other applications, so Jira definitely did not get the attention that it deserved. So here's my ownership checklist. So first, decide who's going to be responsible for the application. So who's going to make both the initial and the ongoing configuration changes? And then later, who's going to maintain the application? Who's going to perform the upgrades? And also, who's responsible for application, server, database, and network stability? Next, determine the number of administrators needed to properly support the application. I like to set both a minimum and a maximum. And you can determine your range by your issue count, your project count, your user count, your frequency of user customization requests, and also how aggressive your routine maintenance schedule is. And of course, if you have too few administrators, that leaves you exposed during holidays, emergencies, or when other company priorities arise. But having too many administrators results in conflicting changes or modifications that might be inconsistent to your management strategy. So one tip I have is to avoid having one team manage all the apps in your company. Because if that team's got a lot of apps to maintain, will Jira get the attention that it deserves? Do the admins for the other apps really even understand the intricacies of Jira administration? So instead, I recommend forming a dedicated team of admins that actually like and care about the application. Next, I'd like to talk about standards, because you need them, and you need to set them. So in this screenshot, next to the issue type field, there's a little question mark. And that icon shows the users the issue types, the statuses, and other values that are already available in your instance. So having them click on this is a really easy way to communicate what options are available when they want a new project. So I try to have users pick from existing schemes and values rather than making new custom values for each new project. Okay, so back to standards. Before you start building custom options, your admin team should determine how many you're going to support and for what purpose. And if you set standards now, it will help your application from becoming uncluttered in the future. So I recommend that you make all configurations as simple as possible and as generic as you can, so they can be easily shared with multiple projects of the same type. And don't make customizations that apply to a very narrow use case, and certainly not just to make one user happy. And if you need justification for denying a customization request, I always cite the integrity of the application. Now this is hard, but as an admin, sometimes you have to say no. You have to be the bad guy. And also you have to dig deeper sometimes when customizations are requested. So for any request, you should determine the impact to the application both now and in the future. So here's a quick tip. If a user requests a very specific implementation, I often see that as a red flag. Let me give you an example. A user will ask for a new group to be created. Okay, sounds pretty easy, sure. I create the group, painstakingly add all the members, tell the users the group's ready to go, and they come back, well, the group's broken. What do you mean it's broken? I wanted to add the group as a watcher. Well, that's not a Jira feature, unfortunately. That's great for the feature request list, but that's not a current feature today. Instead, I should have been talking to them about how to modify a notification scheme and maybe not creating a group at all. Another example when I don't dig deep enough, users will often ask for additional issue types in their project. So you and I know that you want multiple issue types when you want multiple workflows, multiple screens, or even both within the same project. But a lot of times users just want a distinguisher. They want one way to say these issues are like this and these issues are like that. And an issue type might not be the best way to do that. You could use a component, a label, maybe an existing custom field. But if you don't ask the right questions, what the user's trying to achieve when they ask you for something in Jira, you're never going to know. And you're going to create sometimes things that aren't really needed. And next, I would like to talk about a test environment. So this screenshot shows just a really easy way to distinguish your test environment from production. And you can see here that I've changed the name of the application to Jira Dev. I've changed the color scheme to green. And I've used my favorite part, the announcement banner. So I remember when I'm in there that this is development and not production. So my mistake with test environments is, well, we didn't have one. And I just got an admin access, and I was excited, and I didn't care. I just wanted to go in and make my changes and do what I needed to do. But I should have stepped back and thought about it a little more first. I should have set up a local server instance and read-only database access, because I was just guessing how the data was structured and stored. And I recommend that you set up read-only access for your admin team to the database. And I realize this will give users access to issues they might not be able to see. But my feeling is always, if you can't trust your users to access your data, you kind of have different problems going on, right? So instead, if you don't already have a test environment, set one up now. That's your homework for after Summit. Go home, do that first thing. And it can be a server instance. It can be a cloud instance if you just can't do another server instance, or even a local instance on your personal computer. And always test your major changes, your large imports, upgrades, proof of concepts, and plugin installs in that test environment first. And you want to make sure that the resources that are powering your test environment are a match to your production environment as much as possible. And definitely the software version needs to be the same, and the configuration should be an exact copy of production. And finally, you want to disable email notifications in your test environment so you can avoid notifying end users with duplicate or fake data. So a test instance and a healthy application are the foundation of a successful upgrade event. So you want to upgrade often for the newest features, fixes, and performance improvements. Here's Josephine Lee to help you prepare for and execute a smooth upgrade.
Thanks, Rachel. So upgrades. Wow, so the first time I did a Jira upgrade, I spent ages and ages setting up my test environment, configuring all of my settings, and making sure that each and every single one of my add-ons were compatible with the new version. And then what happened was, when I was just about done, I accidentally unzipped the backup copy of my old instance of Jira over my freshly upgraded copy. Wow, that was hours of work down the drain. And I'm sure that some of you here today have your own battle stories of doing a Jira upgrade. So I'm here to deep dive into the upgrade process and run you through some tips to make your next upgrade smoother. Now, I've split these tips up into the 4 stages of an upgrade: research, getting your instance ready, doing a test upgrade, and execution. So everyone's upgrade process here will look a little bit different, as all of your instances are unique. But I've tried to pick these tips today so that they cover a wide range of different instance sizes and styles. Now, these tips are especially handy for first-time upgraders of medium to large-sized instances, but I'm hoping that all admins can walk away today with a few tips to help their next upgrade. So let's get started. Now, all upgrades start with research, and there are many factors to think of when it comes to planning your upgrade. First, you're able to upgrade as long as you have an active license, and you should make sure that your license is at least active until the day that you plan to do your production upgrade. Now, you can check your license status at my.atlassian.com, and your billing or technical contacts will have access to this portal. Then, you need to decide which version of Jira you want to upgrade to. Every version of Jira has different features and requirements, and knowing what these are before you start your upgrade can help prevent any surprises along the way. So things to consider include what features each version has and the critical bug fixes that are available in each one. You should also take note of the supported platforms for each version. So these include things like the operating systems, the databases, the Java platforms, and the LDAP engines that we support. Once you've chosen the version, you also need to check your upgrade path, especially if you're upgrading past a major version. So for example, if you're on Jira 6.2 and you want to upgrade to Jira 7.4, then you actually have to upgrade to Jira 7.0 first before doing the upgrade to Jira 7.4. Now, these are because of the upgrade tasks that we removed in Jira 7.1. So knowing which upgrade path to take before doing your upgrade can help you from getting to the end of a bad upgrade and having to start all over again. So where do you find all this information? Well, the team at Atlassian have created this handy upgrade matrix to help you choose both the best Jira version and Jira upgrade path for you to take for your instance. And you can access it here at this link. So throughout my presentation, I'll be showing quite a few different links, and I'll rush past some of them. Don't worry if you don't catch one of them, because I'll show a slide at the end with all of them available. So the upgrade matrix contains all of the information on the top features, the critical bug fixes, the supported platforms, and more, such as the upgrade path for the last few versions of Jira software. Now, once you've chosen which version you want to upgrade to, it's vital that you read all of the relevant documentation that's available. Now, these include the upgrade notes and the release notes for all the versions that you're upgrading past. So again, for example, if you plan to upgrade from Jira Software 7.2 to 7.4, then we recommend that you read the Jira Software 7.3 upgrade notes and release notes, as well as the 7.4 upgrade notes and release notes. So these documents have important information regarding the new version of Jira and helpful information for your upgrade, such as how some of your customizations may be affected by this new version. So again, we strongly recommend that you read these before doing your upgrade. So the last step in this stage is to consider what upgrade method you're going to take. And there are a few different options here. First, the rapid upgrade method uses the installer, and it's the most effective and intuitive method. We recommend that you use this method as long as you're staying on the same operating system and database. The manual upgrade method is generally used to maintain a higher degree of control over your installation. And you also have to use this method if you're changing operating systems or databases as part of your upgrade. The upgrading with a fallback method is ideal for enterprise environments where Jira is mission critical to your business and mitigating downtime is a high priority for you. So this method allows you to safely roll back to a previous version of Jira in the event of any upgrade difficulties. So if you're looking for a way to upgrade your system without taking your instance or your end users offline, then you should check out our Jira Software Data Center offering, which has enterprise features such as zero downtime upgrades. If you're interested in learning more about how these deployments work, then come visit us over at the Data Center booth. I'll be there later on today. If you want more information on choosing an upgrade method and how to run them, then you can find it at this link. So after you've done your research, it's time to get your instance ready for the upgrade. Now, newer Jira software versions sometimes require changes to your environment, such as allocating more memory or adjusting your reverse proxy settings. We communicate these types of requirements in the upgrade notes that I just mentioned. So again, we strongly recommend that you read these before doing your upgrade. Now is also a good time to run an instance health check. So the instance health checker has a number of predetermined checks that the team at Atlassian have written. And you can run these checks to help inform the health of your instance. So to access it, go to the admin section of Jira in the top right-hand corner and click on System. Locate the Troubleshooting and Support Tools tab in the left-hand side, and clicking on this link will land you directly into your instance health checker. So landing on this page will automatically run your checks for you, and if there are any checks that fail here, make sure you resolve them before you proceed with your upgrade. Lastly, check that your add-ons will be compatible with the next version of Jira. Now, we've identified that add-ons are one of the biggest causes of concerns when it comes to upgrades, and there are a few ways to go about this. First, you can use the built-in Jira Update Checker tool. Now, to go to this, again, go to the admin section of Jira in the top right-hand corner, and this time click on Add-ons. locate the Manage Add-ons tab in the left-hand side, and you'll see a list of all your add-ons. Once you scroll to the bottom, click on the Jira Update Check tool, and once you're in the tool, simply choose the version of Jira that you want to upgrade to. When you do this, you'll be able to see which add-ons will be compatible with your new version of Jira and which won't. So you may have to upgrade some of your add-ons at this point here. And now for custom add-ons. So that's an add-on that you've built in-house specifically for your instance. We have a bonus tip here, and that's to make sure you follow our API changes and have an early version of Jira running in case you have to do any refactoring. You can access these updates from developer.atlassian.com and through our early access programs. Now, this is a potentially longer process, but it is a necessary step if you have any critical custom add-ons. Also, if you have multiple custom add-ons, then we recommend that you disable them all and turn them on one by one after your upgrade is complete. And this way you can see which add-ons work in your new versions and single out those that don't. So for more information on checking your add-on compatibility, you can find it at this link, and there'll be more information on the upgrade checker tool that I showed. So once you're ready to move on, we strongly recommend that you run a test upgrade in a staging environment that's identical or closely resembles your production environment. Don't upgrade your production instance until you're confident that your test upgrade in your staging environment is working, including all of your add-ons and your customizations. So the first tip here is to set up your staging environment. Now, Rachel talked about this briefly, so I'll run through it really quickly. But there are 4 rough steps in setting up your staging environment. First, set it up so that it replicates your production environment as closely as possible. Copy over any reverse proxies, SSL configurations, or load balancers that you may have. Then, back up your production database. Install that database onto your staging server and restore your backup. Now, a quick extra tip here is to make sure you name your staging database differently to your production database, as that could lead to a lot of confusion. Then make a copy of your Jira installation and home directories and point it to your staging database. Here, ensure that you disable email notifications, as you don't want your staging site emailing your real users. Now, if you do want to test your email notifications, then you can keep them enabled. Just make sure that you prepare a separate development service mail configuration. And finally, replicate any external user management systems, such as Crowd, and modify any app links that you have. So that was a really high-level run-through of just one way of setting up a staging environment. If you want more detailed information or step-by-step instructions, then you can find it at this link. Once you've done this, run the test upgrade in your staging environment. Here, make sure you write down any notes, any questions, or any comments that come up while you do your test upgrade, as this will be really, really helpful when you do your production upgrade. Also, make note of how long the upgrade takes you, as this information will help you plan your system outage and communicate with your users. So we've created this handy upgrade checklist to help you keep track of your notes as you run through your upgrade. And you can access it here at this link. Once the test upgrade is completed in the staging environment, have a sample group of your end users test their normal day-to-day workflows in the newly upgraded staging environment. If you can, select a subset of end users from different teams that use varying Jira software functions. Have them communicate any errors or inconsistencies they find during testing, and ensure that they're resolved before you move forward with your upgrade. Now, once you're happy with your test upgrade, we recommend that you communicate the coming production upgrade to your end users. As a practice, be sure to include the following details in each message, such as the date, the time, and the time zone of your scheduled upgrade, how it will impact their Jira software access, and who to contact with questions or concerns. The most common channels for upgrade communications include the Jira announcement banner, email, internal chat, and physical communications like posters. Keep in mind here that using multiple channels is the most effective way to make sure everyone's in the know, so the more the merrier. And now you're finally ready to move on with your actual production upgrade. Once you're ready, it's important that you back up your instance data. Now, even if you just did a backup while you were setting up your test environment, if any time has passed since then, it's important that you take another snapshot just before your upgrade so that all of your latest changes are preserved. And now you can choose between Jira's XML backup utility and using your native database's backup tools to do this. So Jira's XML backup utility is only ideal for moving and migrating small instances. So we strongly recommend that you use your native database's backup tools to ensure stability at scale. Also, after you've backed up your data, it's important that you confirm that your backup has actually worked. Database backups could be corrupted, and it's a good idea to figure out how to restore it and have a rollback plan already figured out. So now execute your upgrade. Follow the notes that you took during your test upgrade, and keep in mind that you can always roll back to a previous version if you encounter any issues. After you've upgraded, follow the steps that you took before in your testing stage, and once your users have tested it again and issues are resolved, feel free to roll out the communication plan to let your users know of the new upgrade. Now here, we recommend adding a section with the new features that are available in this version so that your users know what to expect. So those are some tips to help you throughout your upgrade journey. Now again, everyone's upgrade process will look slightly different as each instance is unique, but hopefully you can use some or all of these tips to help inform your next upgrade. So here are all the links that I showed throughout the presentation, including links to the upgrade matrix, the release notes, and anything else that you saw. So I'll just pause here for a sec. Okay, I've got a couple more links for you actually. First is our best practices guide for upgrading Jira Software Server. Now, I showed a lot of links, so if you need a starting point, I would recommend that you start here, as this has most of the tips that I just ran through and more. Now, Rachel also has her presentation notes and 12 additional mistakes to avoid available here at jirastrategy.com/champion. So if you enjoyed our presentation and you want to learn more, definitely go check that out. She'll also be doing a book Q&A in the community lounge right after this session for a book Jira Strategy Admin Workbook. So come along and ask her any questions that you have. So to wrap up, think about your instance. What's taking up unnecessary clutter and what needs cleaning up? Think about how every change impacts your application in the future and avoid common admin mistakes and over-customizations. A test instance and a healthy application are the foundation of a successful upgrade event, and you should upgrade often for the newest features, fixes, and performance improvements. So think about your instance, plan your next upgrade, and become a Jira Admin Champion today.